Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Katie Theoharides. I'm the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs, and I couldn't be more pleased to see so many familiar faces and folks in the room who have helped us to build our Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program into the tremendous partnership it is between the Baker-Polito administration and all of the local governments who make our Commonwealth such a fabulous place to live and work and raise a family. This week, there were some poll results released in the beginning of the week that I actually found very unsurprising. And one of the results, this was a climate change poll, one of the results was that there is a clear majority of folks in Massachusetts want their state and their local officials and their towns and cities to lead on climate change. And I just thought, well, we are seeing this. We are seeing this in every corner of the Commonwealth, in all of the work you all are doing and in the leadership that we really felt from cities and towns before we even started this program. And one of the reasons that we did start this program was because so many cities and towns were seeing the effects of climate change, we're seeing their DPW budgets increase year over year over year, and we're recognizing the challenges and the vulnerabilities from the impacts of climate change, but also seeing the opportunity. And I think that's what has come through this program, is just the opportunity that there is to not only address the impacts of climate change we're seeing, but to build the strong, resilient communities of tomorrow that can support our economic goals, support our families, and really be safe and beautiful places to live into the future. Today we're here with a number of announcements around our Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, around its continued growth over the last 2.5 years. And also to tell you that the need continues to be great for funding in this area to help our cities and towns build strong and resilient infrastructure. And we have filed legislation, Governor Baker has filed legislation to support continued and expanded efforts, Senate Bill 10, that would help us work with cities and towns across the state at a much bigger scale with dedicated revenue to invest in infrastructure, in critical natural resources that support all of these goals. But my message to all of you is to thank you for your work. It is you who are leading on this, and we couldn't be more thrilled to partner with all of you on this, to partner with Mayor Mitchell and Mayor Spicer, who you will hear from. We are seeing projects, just to give you a snapshot, we are seeing projects through this program that include everything from resilient energy in the town of Munson that suffered significantly during a tornado in 2011, infrastructure that will power their critical town facilities in an event like that so they can recover quicker, to really innovative design for a parking lot that serves elderly residents in the city of Worcester, to what we're seeing here in New Bedford with resiliency design around the harbor to ensure that that can continue to be a vital economic resource into the future. So thank you for all of your participation today, and I would like to introduce someone who needs absolutely no introduction to any of you who work in cities and towns, our Lieutenant Governor, who has been such a champion for this program.
Good afternoon. Very happy to see all of you here. I know the official welcome to New Bedford will come soon when the mayor greets you. I also want to thank Mayor Spicer for joining us from Framingham and for taking the ride down this afternoon. First of all, let me just say thank you to Secretary Theoharides. She came into our administration under then Secretary Matt Beaton, specifically with the responsibility to stand up programming around climate change and adaptation and resiliency. And she's done an amazing job, which obviously led her to have the ability to serve in an even deeper role in our administration. But let's just look back over the last few years. One of the first things she did is that the state needs to sort of put their money where their mouth is, and to think as a state government how we need to assess our own vulnerabilities and adapt to climate change and put forward solutions to make state government operate in a more resilient fashion. And we, in our administration, as you know, value our municipal partners so much. We wanted to make sure that you also had an opportunity to think about your property within your municipality or with your neighboring partners, communities, and to think about how you could develop the solutions locally to protect the property within your municipality from rising sea levels or waters within your area. And it was the secretary at that time, not secretary, who stood up this program, literally formed it and put the meat behind it and actually put her shoulder behind the effort to engage municipalities all across our Commonwealth to think and take action around this issue. So today, as we say, 82% of our communities are either part of the MVP program doing a planning effort to plan and assess your vulnerabilities, or you're beyond the plan and you're actually seeking out action grants to work on construction projects in your community to make yourself more resilient, is really a great credit to her leadership. So just please join me in thanking the Secretary. This is a really important program, which is obviously true, given that so many of you have signed up in such a short period of time. But when I think about the work that we've done in communities, not only through the best practice program to make sure that you're able to deliver great services locally, but you really have a responsibility around the assets that you have within your community. And what I love about this program is that you're planning and thinking about it, you're putting something tangible together, and then you're working with us to make sure you're coming up with the innovative solutions that will protect this property going forward. Why is it important to protect property in your community? Well, as municipal leaders, you want to make sure that the property that is within your control is being used at its highest and best use. Obviously, that's tax dollars that come right back into your government to be able to drive even further services even further. It's also important for you to protect the assets that sort of control the infrastructure within your community. And as we are in a coastal community right now, and you can think about how New Bedford and Fairhaven are partnering together to look at the assets within their DPA, you can also look at Framingham or Auburn and say there are culverts and dams and other structures that are your responsibility, and that if those are compromised, it can literally compromise a lot of assets within your community. Roadways that could be put out of use, and properties, whether municipal or privately owned, that could be put out of use. That's a disruption to your economy, it's a disruption to public safety, it's a disruption overall to your community. So really important that we do these assessments, which you are doing today, and then taking action on it. I also just want to make the final point that we lead in a lot of areas in this Commonwealth, and we are leading with regard to renewable energy, energy savings, climate change and adaptation. There was no playbook for this program that Katie took out and said, let's just follow this playbook. We are writing the playbook. You as community officials are writing the playbook on the municipal level. So this is a really important effort. I just want to thank you for taking it seriously. Congratulations for the grant funds that you're receiving today, and a recognition that this isn't just simply a coastal issue, it's an every community issue. So let's just keep working together, let's be smart, and let's make sure we get to 100% participation. It is now my great honor to introduce a leader on many initiatives that are clearly setting Massachusetts apart, not only in the way we conduct ourselves as government officials, working in a collaborative and bipartisan fashion, but also leading the way in terms of healthcare, in terms of transportation and housing, which we'd certainly like to see more done, and clearly with regard to climate. Renewable energy, hopefully, if the federal government will continue their work. We'll be able to see the offshore wind procurements, and this community obviously servicing a great part of that, standing up of offshore wind as a renewable energy source, to hydroelectricity, something that Governor felt passionate about when he was coming into office, and then be able to stand up that procurement. Just a lot of great initiatives under his leadership, and it's no surprise that he would wanted to be here personally today to congratulate all of you and to talk about how important this program is to all of us. So with that, our Governor, Charlie Baker.
So first of all, let me echo both the Secretary and the Lieutenant Governor's comments about your participation and support for this initiative. As the Lieutenant Governor said, there was no municipal vulnerability preparedness program anywhere in the country when we decided to pursue this, and there wasn't anybody who'd ever actually put one together before. So to the Secretary, I would just say, you should all know that when she created this program, we actually didn't know if anybody would participate or not. But we had an inkling that they might, and the reason why was because when we put together very early in our first term the compact program, which was a best practice program. Nobody in municipal government had to participate. It was totally up to you if you wanted to step up and take advantage of some of the technical assistance and the resources that we made available. All 351 cities and towns eventually, on a voluntary basis, ended up working on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of best practices of one kind or another, and they actually turned that whole program into kind of a funnel where if somebody ended up discovering that something worked pretty well, they would say, you know, we should put that into the best practice program, and we would then run it through the funnel, and it would become part of the opportunity that was available to communities across the Commonwealth. So it wasn't just the Commonwealth working individually with cities and towns. You had cities and towns that were literally starting to share best practices through the program as well. And I think one of the things we've tried to do as an administration is to make the case over and over again that if you have great communities, you have a great Commonwealth. Because most people frame how they think about how things are going based on how things are going in their hometown. And as a former member of my select board, the Lieutenant Governor is a former member of her select board. Many people in our administration served in local government at one time or another. We get it. And this program, we believe, was a great opportunity to partner yet again with our colleagues in local government. The fact that 285 plus or minus of the cities and towns in Massachusetts have been involved with this so far out of the 351, again on a voluntary basis, is a big statement about the fact that you take it seriously, we take it seriously, and that we will be able to truly figure out where the opportunities are, where the vulnerabilities are, and then work together to make sure we deal with them. And Lieutenant Governor mentioned the Commonwealth's own portfolio. By the time you get out to about 2022, we'll have spent almost $1 billion on resiliency initiatives just on state stuff, okay? And I think in many respects, the great challenge for all of us is to figure out a way, once we do the vulnerability work, to then actually create a program that just continually is able to invest on a go-forward basis so that we can deal with the very significant issues that I think we all believe will be there. And that's why we filed S10. And when's Joint Rule 10? It's like, is it this week or next week? Today. Okay. Did it get extended?
It did.
Oh, nuts.
No, but both sides have agreed.
Okay. So S10 is basically a renewable expendable trust that will generate about $130 million a year. And because it's a renewable expendable trust, it can be spent alongside municipal funds. It can be spent alongside private funds. It can be spent alongside a lot of different kinds of resources to invest in community solutions to mitigate the very hazards that are raised by this vulnerability planning exercise. And if you think about it, $130 million a year over 10 years, it's a lot of money. But it's money that I think we all believe in the long run is going to save the Commonwealth and save our communities funding and our businesses and our property owners. And I'll tell you why. I was visiting FEMA last year just about this time, and they told us that they were spending 10 times as much money on disaster recovery as they were spending 30 years ago. 10 times. They said they were spending so much money that they were starting to think that maybe they should be investing in a program like this one that we have here in Massachusetts, so the communities would be able to figure out what their issues were, put the resiliency in place, and then when they had the 100-year storm for the 5th year out of the last 10, they would be able to basically survive that storm and not have to just continue to rebuild and rebuild and rebuild. And Lieutenant Governor and I, how many times have you and I been places in Massachusetts after some sort of storm and had people say, you know, I've lived here for 50 years and that's the 3rd time that's happened in the last 5 or 10 years. Happens a lot. And the frequency and severity of storms is kind of a fact of life at this point. And if you talk to anybody in the fishing community, you talk to anybody who's in the forestry business or the resort industry or farming, they all say the same thing, which is things have significantly changed, and as a result, we need to change too. And this program today, where we're announcing $11 million worth of grants to about 80 communities, including the 2 represented here. And by the way, Mayor, thank you very much for hosting. And Mayor Spicer, thank you for joining us as well. This is about partnership, but it's also about what I would describe as a proactive approach to actually put in place the infrastructure that's going to be required to make sure that all of our communities and all of our entities are properly resilient to deal with what the next 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years is going to be like. And I think from our point of view, the fact that 285 or more of 351 cities and towns on a voluntary basis is bigger than that. See, when you're the elected official, you always worry about overpromising and putting a bigger number out there than there might be. I knew it was at least 285, so I went with that. But the secretary, of course, would know what the real number is, and it's 287. So the good news is 285, at least 285, is still correct. It is. Yeah, thank you. The bottom line is, once again, communities across the Commonwealth have really stepped up on this, and that's made a very big difference for us. And Mayor Mitchell, we're in your neck of the woods. I do want to give you a chance to say a few words. And again, congratulations on partnering with Fairhaven on this vulnerability preparedness exercise. That's a great demonstration of sort of joint commitment and collaborative approaches, which are exactly the kinds of things that we appreciate here in Massachusetts. Thank
you. All right. Well, welcome everybody. If you haven't been to New Bedford in a while, don't be alarmed by the sperm whale skeleton. We're not in that business anymore. We've moved on. But I did want to welcome everybody here because this is a good place to talk about climate change. The reality for New Bedford is that we stare at the effects of climate change all the time. We are, along with Providence, the 2 northernmost cities on the East Coast that are prone to storm surge. We have seen over the years small incremental, but increases nonetheless, and sea levels. Our beaches are gotten smaller, some 10 inches of sea level rise here in the last century, with about another 1.5 feet predicted over the next century. But then, as the governor said, there's the fishing industry, which is very vulnerable to climate change. We've seen, among other things, a change in the stocks that have been landed here over the years. We used to have a much more vibrant, for instance, lobster fishery here, and those lobsters with their little legs have migrated northward to follow the colder water. And we are most especially concerned about the possibility, the risk of ocean acidification. With warming waters comes a lower pH of our oceans, which makes animals like scallops harder to reproduce, and we care about scallops an awful lot here. So we deal with it all the time, and so we've been very deliberate about the work that we do and have over the last several years, both in terms of climate change mitigation and adaptation. We've become a leader in renewable energy. We've done a lot of infrastructure work with much more to come in the pipeline. And so, it's in that context that, this work has begun and has been underway for some time. And so I really do want to thank Secretary Theoharides for her work, both before she ascended to her current position, but before, when you used to be known as Climate Katie, right? That was your first name before you became secretary. But in all seriousness, we had worked before. You had worked with our resilience director, Michelle Paul, on a number of initiatives, and this is a terrific program, and we really appreciate not only the expertise you bring, but also the passion you've brought to the job, because I think in the long run it will pay off greatly for the Commonwealth. And of course, the work of the governor and the lieutenant governor along the way in supporting efforts at the local level to deal with this. I mean, there could have been a whole bunch of different approaches to this, right? Some just massive grant program doled out to deal with, very obvious infrastructure problems. And I think the approach you've taken is really the right one. I say that in part, not only from where I sit as mayor, but also I'm the chair of the Energy Committee at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and if we talk about climate mitigation and resilience all the time. And one of the challenges among American cities these days is that you have a lot of places that, a lot of cities and towns across America that don't have the capacity to hire a Michelle Paul, although there's nobody else like you, Michelle, but who don't have the funds to hire a resilience director, don't have an energy office like we do. And those are places that with a little bit of money could build capacity, bring in the expertise that's needed to figure out what needs to be done. Because at the local level, you do see things up front. You do know where the vulnerabilities lay and the expertise that's needed. And you'll see, you look through the list of grants that are being announced today. A lot of them are about capacity building. A little bit of capacity building in the way of state funds can go a long, long way. There's a really high return on investment. And so that's why I see as really the key element of this program. And so it's great investment. It's very thoughtful government work on the part of the Baker and Polito administration, and I think we're all going to benefit from it in the long run. As far as the Bedford grant goes, it's money we will use well. I mean, we have that grant, and Mark Rees, the town administrator from Fairhaven, is here. He sees it the same way. You're in the midst of a big economic engine. The 3-mile stretch along this waterfront that we're in the middle of right now generates about 2% of the state's GDP. It's a $11 billion economic enterprise, and it employs supports about 7,000 jobs. And it is, because it involves the sea, it is vulnerable to rising sea levels. And so, we're trying to get out ahead of it, and the grant that we're receiving today will facilitate those efforts. So we appreciate that support as well. And one last word, I do want to just thank my friend Yvonne Spicer, the mayor of Framingham, for coming here today. I know she's been a leader on climate issues as well. Landlocked, to be sure, but climate change affects everybody. And so, yes, surrounded by water, yes. But in any event, this is a great program. It's being very well administrated, and we appreciate the support. Thanks, Governor.
I'd also like to invite Mayor Spicer up to speak. I think this is a great representation of how important this program is, not just in our coastal communities like New Bedford, but all across the Commonwealth. And the city of Framingham is undertaking a great project to look at stormwater in a specific neighborhood. And this is the kind of approach we're going to need in neighborhoods all across the state. So thank you, Mayor.
Good afternoon. First and foremost, I want to say that Framingham, for those of you, we're about 20 miles west of Boston, but I saw my fellow mayor colleague in the audience who traveled a little bit further than I did from Amesbury. Mayor Cassandra Grove is in the audience too. So, you know, we all care about this. This is an issue that is near and dear to my heart because from the onset of my administration, I talked about how important it was to preserve our assets. And having a background in science and engineering is also an asset to coming into this position as a mayor. So I get it. Climate change is real. And I'm also pretty proud of my community that in the 2 years, I'm actually starting my third year of being mayor of this city and a brand new city of Framingham. But one of the things that I learned very quickly that was important is that we focused on issues around preserving our assets, climate change, and part of that was hiring our very first sustainability coordinator. And Sean, wave over there, there's Sean over there. He was an integral part of this grant proposal, and as was our conservation and DPW department. Conservation up front and center here with me. It's a team effort in Framingham. And yes, working on stormwater. Last night, we had a presentation at City Council to address this very issue of stormwater. And I was with John last week, 2 weeks ago, at the U.S. Mayor's Conference. So it's we're thinking about it here in Massachusetts, but we're thinking about this across the country. And and certainly as mayors, we try to work together and help each other along the way, because at the end of the day, we have got to build better communities to leave for our children and our grandchildren's children. And if we're not doing our job as the leaders in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So I can be mayor another 10 years in Framingham because there's term limits. But the reality is this will help us along the way with addressing stormwater in our community. And we are surrounded by lots of water in Framingham. The Sudbury River, we've got lots of inlets and waterways. And I have to say, I've learned more about preserving our assets, invasive species, and water chestnuts, and things that I did not pay as much attention to, but I am, and I cannot thank the Baker-Polito administration enough for making Framingham an integral part of their administration, because they've spent a good bit of time in Framingham between the both of them supporting my leadership as mayor, and I am grateful for that effort. And so, you know, as we all continue to work on this, know that we can learn from each other, and I think that's another component of this too. We don't all have to reinvent the wheel. We can share best practices, and I'm hoping that what we learn in Framingham about stormwater, there's an avenue to share that with other people so that we can build upon that knowledge. So, and making the dollars go a lot further when we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. So, and thank you, John, for once again hosting too. So, and Secretary, thank you. Good to see you again. So.
I hear we have another mayor in the house. Mayor Gove? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be here. I did travel a long ways from Amesbury. We are using this grant for an open space plan. One of the distinctions of our community from our neighboring communities is our open space, and we are also surrounded by many waterways and rivers, and it's important for us that we maintain those and that we take care of them. So this is going to be an exciting opportunity for us to sort of dig into that process and update that open space plan. I want to thank Tom Barrasso. We have our own energy director, and he came here with me today, and he's taken on a lot of the work to get us through this process and will take us forward. So thank you for your support in creating this program for us and allowing us to participate.
Thank you very much. And Tom is someone we've worked with on this program for a number of years, so good to see you here today, Tom. I did want to point out before we conclude that we have a program manager now, Kara Runstead, who's here from EEA. So for those of you who haven't met her, this is a new person who's come on. And we also have 6 regional coordinators, and their very job is to help you all, well, apply and get into the program first and foremost, and then apply for the Action Grant funding and see a project from initiation and sort of the ideas to completion and delivery. But a key part of that is being able to share these lessons learned so that we do have these playbooks and we're able to roll them out across the state without reinventing the wheel. Courtney Roca is our regional coordinator for the Southeast region, but we have one in every corner of the Commonwealth now, which is going to be such an asset and a support both for the work we're doing at the state level and the work you all are doing. So thank you. We are going to do a group photo, I believe, up here. Yes. Yeah, it would be wonderful. We have, that would be great. Can we go starting from the front row? Which towns are here? I had a list at some point, but I don't have it anymore. So if you could just stand up and say which town you're from. Yeah.
Framingham.
Great.
I'm with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and I'm also live in the town of Plymouth and helping them with their MVP.
Great.
Gosnell. Can you?
Gosnell.
Yeah.
All right.
That's great, yeah.
It's the Open Plan. We're acquiring about over 65 acres of land that's undeveloped that will be preserved forever. So very appreciative. Wow.
And this was the last piece in a much bigger plan. We were really excited to see it. Great. Gosnell, okay.
From the city of Melrose, and you have a grant to put a green infrastructure installation in our city hall parking lot. Very excited to have extra, do away with all the water that's been sitting there.
Great.
Thank you.
We're from the town of Bolton, and we'll receive a planning grant this afternoon, and we've already started the conversation for the environmental climate adaptation resiliency by holding environmental support.
Terrific, terrific. And welcome to the program. This is the first year we saw more action grants than we saw planning grants, and we're so glad to see new communities coming into the program. All right.
I live in the town of Acton, and we're very excited to work on a project to remove a dam on a former industrial property, and which we hope to turn into a park someday.
That's great. I'm kind of going back and forth here, so back to you guys. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Hi, Kathy. We're doing hydrological model of our entire water system in town and seeing where we need to make a difference.
Town Board, action grant for zoning climate.
And you guys did a great orchard assessment of your industry.
Absolutely.
In your planning grants.
Sending that.
Yeah.
Town of Sandusky, Western Mass. We are the largest town in Western Mass. We have 51 miles of dirt roads. So we have a rural dirt road and we're doing a combined between our roads and Shepherd.
And you probably had the longest drive here today.
It was about 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
About 11 miles from the New York border.
Thank you for coming. And this project, we hear from the hill towns and the Berkshires all the time, this project will be so valuable to so many towns that have these dirt roads. Yeah.
You have an internet plan, right? We do. All right, just checking.
All right, bouncing over to, well, that's a MVP coordinator row. Maybe we'll go back to you guys. Amesbury.
Amesbury, Massachusetts, we're going to inject climate resiliency into our open space plan. We're blessed with a lot of open space and we take care of it.
Town of Brookline, we're developing an urban forest climate resiliency master.
This row?
From the town of Oxford, I'm Susan Franz. This is our town manager, Steve Setti. I'm from the Board of Health, Joe and Maya. And we are working on an integrated mosquito control program. We're going to working on placing a couple of culverts as well as doing monitoring and marble treatments.
Great. That was a new entry to the program this year. We're thrilled you're joining us with that.
Hi, Town of Auburn, Town Manager and Town Planner. Thank you so much for this grant referral. It's an action grant, and it's to study and come up with a report and analysis on protecting our waterways from roadways. We have a lot of highways that go through Auburn right in the center of the state, and we really need to make sure that we protect our and preserve our waterways.
Terrific. Thank you. All right, back row here.
This is the town of Easton, the town administrator and the chair of the select board. We are, I'm Andrea Langhausen. we're going to be removing some abandoned concrete structures at the base of a regulated floodway, and in doing so, we're going to recreate wetlands that were there before, on town land.
Terrific. Thank you. All right, I know that we have a couple others in the room.
I'm Mark Priest. I just want to acknowledge our partnership with Bedford on our planning grant concerning harbor resilience. And I also want to mention this is a continuation of a partnership that we've had with the city on a number of fronts. We're partnering with them on the dredging program, opioid task force. A lot of this is funded through the state, so I just want to thank both the city of Bedford as well as the state for all your assistance to this area.
Thank you, and we'd love to see a regional action grant. It's great to have multiple communities acting together on a common purpose. Great. You guys are in Bedford. Here we go.
City of Lynn, we'll be looking at Strawberry Brook and looking to diminish some of the flooding concerns in the West Lynn area of the city. But more importantly, we'll be also looking to submit additional action grant programs. We can't thank you enough for this program and the work that the administration's done.
Next round is in April. So it's coming right up for those.
We'll be ready.
I live just north of the city of Lynn, and I remember maybe about a year ago, we had one of those flash storms that people thought came once every 10 years. It seemed to come about once every 10 minutes. And I think you got 7 inches of water in like 30 minutes.
Yep.
And I don't care what your stormwater situation looks like or how new your culverts are. It's just not, that place was flooded out for days. And I say all the time that one of the reasons why this isn't just a coastal issue, even though you and I both live in coastal communities, is because we have thousands of culverts all over the Commonwealth, and those culverts were built for a very different time. And with the frequency and severity of storms we're all going to be dealing with, we all have infrastructure we have to do something with. And, you know, most communities are like, Swampscott has 14,000 people. We have 351 cities and towns. I get news for you. What, 300 and something of them, less than 20,000 people. And that brings me to your point, Mayor, about the fact that, you know, there are plenty of opportunities here for the Commonwealth to create capability through a shared partnership like this. But it only works if the local communities choose to play. And we're really grateful for the fact that so many of you choose to, because it gives us the ability to make a lot of progress over time on really important stuff. We've been working that internet project now for 4 years, 53 communities, and there's reasons why it's hard and it's difficult, it's complicated, but, you know, it's going to get done. Got it.
I see another here.
I'm with the Charles River Watershed Association, and we're working with our watershed communities to identify vulnerabilities and identify potential projects for grant applications.
Terrific. And another great regional group who is leading on this. We have another watershed group in the room. Julie, do you want to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Julie works with the Mystic River Watershed Association, and we have a 18 community regional climate voluntary partnership among communities that have just gotten $1.2 million of MVP funding. I hope I'm not scooping you at all. But,
that's great.
Including 6 communities working together with infrastructure managers like Logan and the team and Deer Island and the oil terminals to make sure that they're storm ready. So, it's the host communities working with the infrastructure managers. It's super exciting. So, MVP program is essential, and I really hope we get bigger dedicated funding.
So do we. You should all talk to your reps and senators about that. S10. Thank you.
We have a letter of sign-on going out that we're going to start bugging you all about if we haven't yet. Julie makes an important point, though, that we forgot to mention critical partners on this who have been our regional watershed groups, our RPAs and nonprofits across the state, especially the Nature Conservancy, who did provide some of the template for this program. All right, back to the back of the room, and then I'll come back here and keep it moving.
The town of where?
You guys got a big grant.
So we're grateful for your support for completion of design on 2 entrances to our beaches, Phelps Beach and Cassidy Beach. So our funds will be used to complete the design and actually reconstruct the beaches to prevent some of the storm surges and create some resilience. So thank you.
I'm really glad you showed today.
All right, Anyone in the back there, you guys are good. Over here.
I'm Joe Owen from the city of Quincy, and Mayor Clark asked me to come today and thank you for the support, both for the drainage issues we're dealing with and the coastal issues. And I want to make a point. You see individual grants today, but as an aggregate, they're very important. We're trying to stop flooding in 15 cities and towns that Western Boston Harbor. And I have personally led the MVP plans for 13 of those communities that did the MVP program and 2 that were approved and certified by them. So I thank you on the regional level and the importance of the aggregate of all these plans and trying to solve problems such as flooding in Boston Harbor. We think we can, through that, stop all federal mandatory flooding programs in 15 cities. So thank you.
Wow, that is an impressive goal. Thank you. Yeah. All right, front row here. If you,
So Madam Secretary, so we're happy to offer restaurant recommendations. Come a long way. You earned a great deal in Bedford.
in the back, yeah.
Town of Fairhaven partnering with
Oh,
the City
sure.
of Bedford on the action grant for the harbor.
Okay.
Hello, Town of Sturbridge. We are beginning our involvement with the MVP with a planning grant.
Welcome. All right, did I miss anyone? Okay, well, let's get you all up here front.
Can I just say that the Nature Conservancy actually gave us match money for this because we are implementing an assessment that they had done last year.